How's it going, everybody? Outlaw Curtis here. As a lot of you Reapers know, I've been kind of incommunicado and behind the scenes a little bit this last several months with some health issues and stuff, but feeling a lot better. Thanks to everyone for your care and concern. I've got a real special privilege today. I'm getting to sit down with a friend of mine, Brett Weiss. Brett is a video game expert. He's written several books on video games, classic video games of the past. He also writes for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, reviews and previews of upcoming games. Brett, thanks a lot for sitting down and talking to us, man. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Brett's latest book, right here, which is the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, is coming out. It'll be available in bookstores everywhere, as well as on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. He's got several other books, as you can see here, regarding video games that you can also find at Amazon.com and on BarnesandNoble.com. So we're sitting here in this amazing room right now. Brett has got a video game laboratory of all kinds of systems, from the Atari 2600, ColecoVision and Television, all the way up to current generation consoles. And I just want to talk to you for a little bit, Brett, about your background and how you got started, what your first video game experiences were, and how you got started as a video game author.
Well, first video gaming that I recall, mid-70s, if I was at the bowling alley or skating rink or something, I started seeing, along with the pinball machines, which I've always loved pinball, started seeing some video games show up, like Midway's Gunfight and some racing games. And back then they still had electromechanical machines where you'd like manipulate like a baseball bat to hit a ball over a ramp into a hole.
Right.
Really getting old.
Yeah, exactly.
But so then these more video games started showing up, and I still love pinball, still love to this day. But once, like, probably the key game that really got me into video gaming even more than pinball was Breakout. I was at the Land of Oz, Northeast Mall in Hearst. And suddenly...
Northeast Mall.
Yeah, suddenly there's this machine that looks kind of like, it kind of has a controller like Pong with a paddle, but instead of just batting a ball back and forth, you're actually maneuvering a paddle at the bottom of the screen, and it's batting a ball into these rows of bricks, making them eliminate. And that elimination factor, somehow that seems to tap some primal instinct, because so many games after that followed it. Space Invaders, you're eliminating the rows of aliens. Tetris, you're eliminating the blocks, and on and on. But Breakout from 1976, that was a huge one for me. And then right around that time, my cousins got a Pong machine for their home, which just blew my mind that you can actually be at home playing video games. Of course, we couldn't afford anything like that, or my parents chose not to afford anything like that.
Right.
So it would be a long time till I got a video game system of my own, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So my brother and I were with my cousins playing this Pong machine. It was like 76 or so, and we're just blown away. And we played it all night, and by the end of our time visiting my cousins, we could just kill both of my cousins at it, because we were, they were like casual, yeah, we got Pong, whatever.
Right.
And my brother and I were just, this was the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Right.
And so after that, my friends, all these video game systems started showing up at my friend's house. My two best friends each had a Fairchild Channel F.
Oh,
that's from 1976. Mm-hmm. It predates the Atari 2600 by a year, approximately a year.
Right.
And it was the first actual ROM cartridge-based system. And you could plug in cartridges. I thought it was incredible, and I would go to each one of them's house all the time. And it would always puzzle me when I would go over there. If they weren't playing it, I was like, well, what are you doing? Why aren't you playing?
Right.
So I would be a pest. And then other friends, 77 and 78, started getting Atari 2600 consoles. Air Sea Battle, Combat, and all those great early, Dodgems was a couple years later, but those early line of even Basic Math I thought was fun. But those early
Basic Math.
Yeah, anything.
Man, this is a blast from the past.
Anything where you could manipulate an image on a TV screen, I thought it was just incredible.
Right.
And so I knew every cousin, every friend I had, I knew who had what game system, because I could just go to their house and play it in television. And then, but I didn't have a game system of my own. We did have some of those Mattel handhelds with the bleeps and bloops.
Right.
And I probably got some around here. Yeah, I've got like Mattel basketball, something like this.
Right. I had the football one, the green. Yeah, I had the
Yeah.
green football one. My
Yeah,
brother
that was
and
football
I.
too.
Right, you pass
Yeah.
it back and forth and take turns and stuff, and the
Right.
little red lights bleeping and stuff. Yeah. My brother and I played that all
Yeah,
the time.
those were a lot of fun. You take them
Yeah.
to school and you try to mute the sound so they couldn't hear you playing them on your desk.
Right.
And so yeah, we had those because they were $30 a piece, so you could get them for Christmas.
Right.
But you could, a $300 game system was out of the question.
Yeah.
200 something for Atari, and television came out. It was 300. So I went along, and I was, relatively content, just going to my friend's house and playing the handheld stuff at home. But then, in like summer of 1982, I believe it was August around that time, Coleco started showing ads for ColecoVision on TV. And you see this kid standing before this, what looked like an arcade machine with all this 3D stuff popping out of the TV,
Right.
and I was like, okay, I know this is bull.
Yeah.
Even then I knew this is just hyperbole.
Yeah, no way.
Well, then they show actual screenshot of somebody playing Donkey Kong, and it looked exactly like the arcade, which just blew me away. I was
Right.
like, this is incredible. I have to get, I said, I can't afford it, but I've got to get it somehow. And ethics stuff, morals sort of stood in the way of maybe stealing one. So anyway, but I knew I had to get one at some point, so I started thinking, okay, it was a $200 system at the time at Toys R Us, and Christmases were $100. We knew going in that we weren't going to get anything over $100 for Christmas.
Right.
So what I did was I loaned Santa Claus $100 plus an extra 30 to get an extra game because Donkey Kong came with ColecoVision.
Right.
So I gave Santa $130 to get me a ColecoVision, to add to the $100 that Santa brought, and so my parents, if you couldn't figure that out, got me a ColecoVision and Mousetrap that came with Donkey Kong plus Mousetrap, which is just another great arcade port, which was just a perfect recreation of Mousetrap in the arcades, which I'd also played at Land of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I had to pitch in over half of my Christmas present, it was the greatest. I was 15 years old, Christmas of 1982. I woke up at some ungodly 4 o'clock or something in the morning, real excited. Got my ColecoVision, plopped down, did all the Christmas morning stuff, and then just spent the rest of the day and night on my beanbag chair in front of the living room TV, just playing Donkey Kong and Mousetrap till I, collapsed. And so, very memorable, and it just sort of escalated from there. But when the ColecoVision and Atari 5200 and all that stuff started coming out, they looked so much like the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
That kids at school suddenly thought Intellivision, Atari 2600, all that was considered uncool all of a sudden.
Right,
It was like,
right.
you might as well have been wearing, a leisure suit.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Ancient.
yeah, or you might as well have like disco if you still had that.
Right.
So, yeah, in the early 80s, you were lame if you had that. So, but I still liked Atari, and I still thought all that stuff was cool because I've always kind of didn't care what people thought,
Yeah.
I just liked it. So I bought an Atari, around 1983, I bought an Atari 2600 for $10 that came with, guy had about 10 or 12 games with it. He brought it, he told me about it.
Mhm.
He didn't want it anymore. He brought it to school. He just, $10 was nothing for all that, especially
Right.
then because the games were still pretty expensive. And so from that point, I just started adding to my collection. And around late 80s, the late 83 and on into 84, the great video game crash happened, which I'm
Right.
sure you've heard about.
Right.
Arcades were still going pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
The computers were, when Commodore 64 came out and all the Atari computers were doing well. But the console industry itself really crashed because the Atari 2600, all these games started coming out for it that were just, shovelware, just a bunch of crap.
Right. Yeah, a bunch of garbage.
Movie-based games, most of those weren't any good.
No.
People would pay, back then, you would, a lot of times you'd just buy the game based on the cover, and if it looked cool, you'd
Right.
bring it home, and then it would just be terrible.
Right.
And of course, E.T., the extraterrestrial, was the famous example of that.
Really. I remember playing that.
Right, and some people to this day will apologize for the game and say it's actually pretty good once you learn the subtleties and figure out to actually play the game, but just for a mainstream consumer to come home, plug it in, and just keep falling into holes as E.T.
Right.
You didn't know what to do, you didn't have the patience, the average
Right.
consumer didn't want to read what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted something you could plug in and play.
Sure.
And so if that would have been just a simple maze game where he could go around eating Reese's Pieces, who knows,
Right.
that might have staved off the crash a little bit further. But it wasn't
Yeah.
just E.T., it was it was all those third-party games that
Right.
were, still $25 and $30 or
Mhm.
more, but then you'd get home and you'd have a terrible gaming experience. And So anyway, there's other factors too, but the video game crash happened. But to me, I'm a 15, 16-year-old, and I don't know about an industry crash or anything like that. I just suddenly see at KB Toys and Toys R Us and all these places these giant bins of games for $5 all the way down to 99 cents. And I'm just grabbing stuff like crazy. Games I've read about in Electronic Games Magazine and Joystick Magazine, things I couldn't afford before. And around this time, I've got a job, and so suddenly I'm just adding all these games to my collection. And so it just sort of took off there, and even further. And from then, my brother got me a Nintendo NES in 1986 for my birthday, and was just blown away by Super Mario Brothers.
Oh yeah.
ColecoVision took a huge evolutionary leap from the 2600 in television in terms of graphics and sounds, and then the NES took another step as far as just freedom of control. The game Super Mario Brothers that came packed with the NES. Secrets and surprises, and just these what seemed to us then just this massive worlds to explore and everything. And
so what was the console that really, the video game crash that we're talking about in 83, 84, what was the console that really brought it back and really pushed it forward? Was it the NES?
It was definitely the NES, which was test marketed in 85
mm-hmm.
in like New York and I think Los Angeles or whatever, but the one I remember is hearing about it in New York, and a friend of mine actually had a sister that lived in Manhattan at the time. Got him one of the very first NESs that
mm-hmm.
rolled off that came to the U.S. And that brought gaming to the mainstream as never before. It's interesting that toy buyers like for Sears and Toys R Us and everything were very skeptical about getting back into the video game market because they saw the crash and
right.
they ate a lot of games, and they had to sell off stuff for dirt cheap and took a loss towards the end there.
They weren't sure if it had staying power as an industry.
Right, exactly. So what Nintendo did was they packaged a light gun and a robot called Grob.
Right, I remember that.
They packaged though and sold it as an entertainment, like the Nintendo Entertainment System,
right.
instead of the Nintendo Video Game System.
Right.
They called it. They wanted to make it more of a, or it was kind of like a Trojan horse. The
mm-hmm.
the robot and the gun were basically a Trojan horse to introduce this, so toy buyers for these big corporations would be more inclined, and they, in '86 when the system was unveiled, to all the different stores and all the cities, Super Mario Brothers was the main catalyst for for the reason it took off so
right.
well, because it just blew everybody away with it was a new experience. It had a little bit of a story. I mean, before that there were some, there was text adventures, and there was
mm-hmm.
adventures for the 2600. There was Pitfall. There were some more elaborate games, but Super Mario Brothers, cartoon-like, humor, storyline,
right,
surprises, secrets, things that had never been that much in video, only in bits and pieces in video games before. Well, this brought it all in one game.
We were talking earlier about the evolution of games and how games of the past, like Pac-Man and Missile Command and all these older games, they were fun, we loved them, but they didn't have what games have today as far as, now you see games from Quantic Dream and all these different publishing houses, Naughty Dog, and they've got some amazing actors, and they've got Hollywood screenwriters,
right.
and they've got these full stories. It's almost like playing a movie. How has that evolution kind of happened, and is that going to continue to happen? Or is there still a place for games that are just basic Contra-style games
right.
that you're playing because it's fun as opposed to basically playing a movie?
Right. Well, a lot of that stuff started in the early '90s with the Sega CD, the Panasonic 3DO, and even the Philips CDI. CD-based games, CD-ROM based games, where it was more of an interactive story, and there were actors and let's see, I've got an interesting example of one of those games here somewhere. Like the very infamous Night Trap for Sega CD starred was it Dana Plato, I believe. It was an interactive game with
Dana Plato, really?
Yeah, and I think that, if memory serves, anyway, you had actors, you had voice effects, you had interactive stories.
Right.
And so it got off to kind of a rocky start, because very pixelated images, the Filmation video, cheesy acting and all that.
Right.
It's evolved over the years with the PlayStation 1, then the PlayStation 2,
mm-hmm.
and online gaming and everything. And,
right.
And yeah, now big budget mainstream titles have to deliver a cinematic experience, or they can't justify the $50 or $60 fee that they pay, charged for the game.
Right.
And those games are interesting, and I get into those sometimes, but I still prefer the old games where you've either got one screen or a scrolling screen,
right,
simple
side scrolling, right.
Yeah, 2D side scrolling. I still like I'm old, so I like old games. That
sure.
probably figures.
Sure.
But I got into BioShock a little bit, and I play the Wii U.
BioShock series, yeah.
It's pretty cool, and got into the Wii U recently with some of the new Mario stuff, and the Wii retro gaming is really big right now for several reasons. The modern consoles and the handhelds are with all the downloadable stuff, independent companies can deliver, a simple 2D game for $10 or $15
right.
or less, just because you can download it. You don't have to have the distribution of the physical media and
right.
all the costs associated with that.
So whereas you might think that with the evolution of the console and better graphics and everything, that would push the old games to the side. In fact, with the online component now, it makes it easier to get those kind of games than it did in the past, having to go search at half-price books or wherever else to find old cartridges and stuff.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, all this interest in the old games has driven the prices through the roof.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff about it.
It's gotten really crazy. During the 1990s, I did a lot of garage selling because I was one of those people that never threw away their old games.
Right.
I threw away a lot of my old boxes, which I hate because those are worth a lot.
I think about some of the systems now that I had and the games I had and what they would be worth today, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, just get on eBay and do completed auctions, and you just
right.
And but during the 1990s, the garage sales were amazing because all the old game systems were considered junk. And you could buy, NES carts, Atari carts. They were everywhere. Every time I went to garage sales on Saturday morning, if I spent, more than an hour, I'd come home loaded down with systems, box consoles, box games, loose cards, everything for just, $5 for a system, $1, 50 cents, whatever. Sometimes they were just giving the stuff away. You just haul this, give me $1 to haul this off. So there was no purpose for it because they had a newer system, or the kids had, gotten them moved out, and there wasn't no reason to have these.
Right.
And so I do a lot of the stuff I have now that's, somewhat valuable. I got, during the crash when the stores were dumping stuff, and then later in the 90s at garage sales, thrift stores, flea markets. I used to I remember going into Thrift Town, seeing that Rob robot in there many times. They would just show up, they'd want, $5 or $6 for it. Well, now that goes for over $100, stuff like that.
Unbelievable.
And all the box complete, a lot of favorite NES titles, box right now, Super Nintendo, NES, and Nintendo 64 boxed complete games, especially of the popular titles like the Marios and Conkers and Contra, the big Zelda. Just prices are going crazy on those, and a lot of it's nostalgia. Well, most of it's nostalgia driven, but a lot of it's just younger people that watch YouTube videos of these YouTube celebrities. They'll review games online, and so these young people who these videos are aimed at will watch that and think, wow, that game sounds really cool, or let's see how bad this game really is. Just like the angry video game nerd. Will sit there and cuss the game for 20 minutes, and that's not really my style. Some YouTube celebrities I find entertaining, but some I don't. And just the angry cussing's that doesn't really do much for me. But the kids love it. And like when Angry Video Game Nerd trashed, well, it's funny, I'll do a lot of shows where I set up and sell video games, and to help promote my books and to help pay for gas and stuff, I'll sell games too. And kids will come up, teens and 20-somethings, and they'll come up and say, I want blank X game, and they're like, really? Yeah, the Angry Video Game Nerd was talking about how terrible it is, and I just want to see just how bad a game can be.
Just how bad it is, kind of like wanting to go see that really horrible movie that everyone's saying.
It's the Plan 9 from Outer Space effect.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of the old games are really great, and that's what, in this book, The 100 Greatest Console Video Games,
yeah, I was going to ask you about
the subtitle is 1977 through 1987, and I focused on that decade because the Atari 2600 came out in 1977, and then 87 cuts off in the early days of the NES. You had Super Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, and some of those really great Metroid early NES titles.
Metroid, man, I spent so many hours.
That
on
was
Metroid.
A killer. No mapping system.
Oh yeah, just fend for yourself. Brutal. Oh my goodness.
they've made games easier over the years because people now would not. I don't think would have the patience to keep playing the same level like 100 times before
Yeah,
you can beat a boss that's so
well, that's
hard.
one of the
You kill
things that
yourself.
that brings up a game that I've always loved, and a lot of people at Hold Square love, is the Demon Souls and Dark Souls series, because there's a lot in that game that a lot of mainstream gamers just can't handle, because you have basically one life, and you're going through this medieval world and these really hard bosses, and you're not given a lot of instruction. And
Right.
nowadays, almost every game, it seems like, has an easy setting, and has and I miss those days of the hard video games, because
Right.
when you beat a game, you felt like you really accomplished something.
Yeah.
You know, you really had overcome a challenge.
Work up
But
a sweat.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd actually
Challenges on your
you'd be
thumbs and-
relieved when you'd beat the game.
Yeah,
It was so
exactly. And like, I'm
difficult.
never looking at this thing again. I finally beat it. So yeah.
But then
So-
10 years later, you think, I want to play that again.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Well,
I cut off at 87 because in 88 you had Contra and a ton of other NES titles that I would have had to eliminate some of the older games from the book. So I wanted to cut it off. You know, plus you've got a clean decade. You know, at least numerically, 77 through 87.
Right.
So
Well, this book looks great. It's full color, and some of these titles just are such a blast from the past. Pitfall, talking about Pitfall, Phoenix. Oh my gosh. Some of these games I had forgotten about that I had actually played. PBA Bowling on Intellivision. Good grief.
that was one of the better early sports titles because it had so many options. You had ball weight and lane slickness. And,
I wanted
you know,
I wanted an Intellivision so bad. My friend Chad had an Intellivision. I had the Atari 2600 at the time, and I'd go over to his house to play his Intellivision. But yeah, that was
lot of
really
sports games,
Yeah,
probably.
a lot
Yeah.
of sports games. A lot of sports games. But
Yeah.
talking about consoles, you've got this amazing game lab here that I guess you do a lot of your research on. You got several televisions here. That I definitely want to kind of take a tour of and look at, because this room is just a dream. This is amazing.
Thank you.
I'm seeing a television over here, Atari 2600 and stuff. Is there anything else we need to know about the book?
One thing, there's over 400 color photos, and like you said earlier, it's going to be obviously it's available online, like everything. But this book will actually be in bookstores, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, independent bookstores, places like that. And it's got a foreword by Walter Day, who basically started the concept of competitive gaming in the early '80s. And it's got quotes from programmers. It's got like production history. It's got reviews. It's got quotes from early magazines, like early '80s magazines, late '80s quotes from back in the day, you know, early
Sure.
'80s, plus quotes from more modern reviewers. So you
Right,
sort of
right.
get a balance of,
Get a balance
of critiques,
right.
plus my opinion. So,
Okay.
and there's some games in there that are very controversial picks. Like one game that so many people hate is Donkey Kong 3.
Right.
Because it's a shooter, like it's sort of a suit. I guess it's vaguely similar to Galaga because you shoot a lot of swirling things
Right,
coming down.
right.
But it's Donkey Kong, and so a lot of people hated that game when it came out because it's not a climbing game like Donkey
Right.
Kong.
Right.
But I love that game. It's awesome. Forget about the Donkey Kong graphics and just it's
Yeah.
an intense shooter. I included it because it's a great game. But I quote people that hate it, you know, just to give,
Right, right.
you know, to provide a little humor and just to give, you know, background. But
Gosh, I just opened the book here, and one of the pages I opened to was combat. If I could somehow clock the amount of hours I spent playing combat, there
Well,
just really is no way to quantify it. I've played this so much. when
What's
I was a
interesting
kid.
about that game is when it came out, everybody absolutely loved it because it was a great two-player game, and it came with every Atari 2600 console, when Atari VCS, which it was called back then. When it came out, everybody played combat because it came with every system.
Right.
Everybody loved it. It was a great mano-a-mano kind of game,
Right.
one-on-one. There
Right.
was the better player would win usually because it was fair, just pure battle.
Right.
But later on, when you know the later systems came out,
Asteroids.
people started hating on combat because they would see it all the time. Anytime you go to a thrift store or garage sale or something, everybody had combat.
Right.
And then later, people in the NES era would start playing it. You know, what is this primitive stuff? So combat got a really bad reputation. Well, now combat, everybody looks back on it and actually plays it and thinks, "Wow, this game was really great." So
Yeah,
it's got
it
a great
was-
reputation now.
Yeah, I think it still holds up. Well,
Absolutely.
let's take a look around here.
Sure.
Because this room is incredible, and I wish I had one just like it.
Thank you.
But just kind of show us kind of around here what you got here in your gaming
Well, up
lab.
here you've got some of the older box systems, boxed ColecoVision, which I wouldn't part with for anything. As a matter of fact,
ColecoVision.
I've always said if I ever find a factory sealed ColecoVision, regardless of how much it's worth, I will open it just to get that 1982 Christmas smell.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyway, obviously that was nuts. But I've got the Virtual Boy, which was Nintendo's failed 3D experiment
Right.
into virtual reality.
Right. Right.
Microvision, which came out in 1970.
Microvision. Oh
Came
my
out a
gosh!
decade before the Game Boy. This was the first handheld game with cartridges.
I had a
plugged
friend
in.
that had a Microvision. The craziest thing ever. You could actually play a video game in the palm of your hand. Who ever heard of such
and
a
put
thing?
in new cartridges
And
it was
put
just-
in different
just little blocks,
cartridges and-
the,
yeah.
the graphics.
Right. Right.
Get that. This was one of my legendary garage sale finds. A box TurboGrafx complete for $1.
$1.
$1, just sitting on a driveway at a garage sale.
I see you've got a Dreamcast up here.
Yes.
A lot of people feel like the Dreamcast is one of the best systems ever.
Awesome
and
system,
feel
early
like-
online capabilities, just some beautiful games like Soul Calibur and some others, and
Yeah.
Soul Fighter, which was a game I liked on it.
I heard some rumors a while back, maybe about trying to bring back a version of Dreamcast. I know so many people have that special place in their
Yeah, I
heart
think
for the
that,
Dreamcast.
that rumor was probably more just wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, yeah.
But this Dreamcast, I had a Dreamcast loose, but I got this one new in the box at GameStop for $40. Right at the end of the life cycle. I rarely buy a game system when it first comes out. I wait till it's cheaper.
Right, right.
Well, Dreamcast, right at the end of the life cycle, they were blowing them out for $40. So that's how I got
Wow.
my Dreamcast. This, the Atari 5200, when it came out in '82, it was not compatible with the 2600. It wasn't backward compatible, which
Right.
made a lot of people mad. So Atari, they came out with a adapter that let you plug in Atari 2600 cartridges. And this is a pretty rare to have a boxed version of that. Mm-hmm. And not that I'd want to play 2600 games on Atari 5200 with those awful controllers.
Right.
But it's cool to have in the box. ColecoVision Super Action controllers that you could use for several games.
Oh yeah, I remember those
Very
controllers.
cool with the 4 buttons.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then I've got my boxed Sega Genesis games. A lot of
Nice.
those I bought during, here in, garage sales, flea markets here and there.
Sure.
Down here you've got Sega Master System, including Rambo 3.
Rambo 3, right.
And Columns was one of the big titles for it, puzzle game, kind of like Tetris. And down here you've got the Sega CD with a pretty cool version of Dragon's Lair, the interactive
Dragon's Lair.
Laserdisc game.
Oh my gosh.
I was terrible at that game in the arcades, but I liked to watch other people play because it was like a cartoon.
And see, I played it in the arcade too, but I never actually played it on a system itself. I played it in
well, on a
the
system
arcade.
itself is vastly superior because you don't have to keep feeding.
Right.
Because I was terrible at it. You had to memorize each step. Of the way.
Right, exactly.
But
Go
it's
back
a
and
great
redo
looking
it.
game.
Right.
Over here is my boxed. I want to show you one thing. What I like about the Genesis carts is they come with the box's plastic box that snaps shut.
Right.
The Super Nintendo boxes, which look cool, but they're much flimsier, cardboard.
Right.
But so the Super Nintendo, which makes them a lot harder to find in good condition and harder to find at all, because a lot of people kept those just because they were convenient and durable. A lot of people threw away the boxes for the Super Nintendo. But one of my favorites that kept the Super Nintendo going for a couple of years longer was the Donkey Kong Country
Donkey
trilogy.
Kong Country series, yeah, right.
Yeah, which continues on the Wii and then the Wii U and everything. Mm-hmm. And of course, Contra 3.
Oh,
Sheer
Contra.
excellence.
I'm a huge Contra fan.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Speaking
and
of,
I had this
boxed.
I
Oh,
had
go ahead.
this Pac-Man. I was just going to say I had this Pac-Man game right here. So
I actually
awesome.
won that at a video game convention. They had an Atari 2600 contest. We played 3 games for a set amount of time, and that was the prize. So that
Wow.
was pretty cool. Speaking
awesome.
of Contra, here's a boxed copy of it.
Man. Awesome.
Yeah, this is still my boxed copy that I got in 1988 for Christmas. And luckily, I threw away most of my ColecoVision boxes. But by the time NES came out, I was collecting more, and I kept those.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and look over here and real quick take a look at some of these systems you got set up here. What do we got going on this television?
Okay, well, right here I've got several old game systems set up. One is the Intellivision, and what this is Space Patrol. It's put out by Left Turn Only. New companies are actually putting out new games for old systems.
Oh, wow.
And what this is, it's Space Patrol, which is a sequel of sorts to Moon Patrol. and you start off on the moon, or you start off on Mars, and unlike Moon Patrol, which takes place just on the moon, this one actually takes place on different planets.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, it's pretty cool.
I remember seeing this. I don't know if I ever.
So you've got to jump, or you'll land in that.
Yeah, exactly. And then here's the Atari 2600.
Atari 2600.
That's what I started on right there.
Got Atari 2600, Atari 5200, Vectrex, all the old systems. What I have set up right now is ColecoVision, which is my favorite system of all time. A lot of it's for nostalgia, but it's also just a great system with a lot of great arcade ports.
Right.
And right now I've got Centipede set up on the roller controller, which is a really nice.
Oh yeah, the roller ball.
And oh yeah, there you go.
Oh, love Centipede.
It gives you really good arcade-like control.
Right, right.
This is one of my wife's favorite games that she'll still play.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's just an excellent arcade port.
That's awesome. We got Galaga going over here. What system is this?
This is TurboGrafx. This is which we talked about earlier, which I have the boxed one. This is Galaga 90, which is a sequel to the great Galaga. Which you can see the graphics have been updated and everything. I mean, nothing will ever beat the original Galaga for just sheer playability and everything. But Galaga 90 adds a lot of nice flourishes. It's a really fun. It's probably my favorite TurboGrafx game.
And then you got Mr. Do over here, and of course I see we got PlayStations over here.
Yeah, I got a PlayStation 1, Atari Jaguar, Sega Saturn, and the old NES.
NES, yes, very nice.
NES. I've got still got an old Aqua Blue or whatever cover for it. Dust cover.
Yeah.
Sega Master System.
And what do we got set up over here? We got a PS2.
Okay.
I see. We got
you got the
Super
PS2,
NES.
Got the Xbox. That's the Halo edition. N64. Then I've got the triple decker, which I call it that. It's the Sega Genesis with the Sega CD add-on, and the 32X, which were just add-ons to the Sega Genesis system. Right now, I've got the Super Nintendo hooked up.
Okay.
With what is my favorite game of all time.
Favorite game of all time.
Which, considering the thousands and thousands of games, a clown game may be an odd choice for a game, but it's a little like Dig Dug in that you dig tunnels, you dig a maze.
Right.
But what's so great about the game is there's tons and tons of strategies, so many different ways to score extra points, like pushing apples on them.
Right.
You can shoot them with the ball. You can spell out extra to get an extra life.
Take a look at that right there.
You can drop an apple on multiple enemies.
Yeah.
To get more points.
That looks like a lot of fun.
It's a blast. It's one of those games that you can just I've been playing it since it came out in the arcades in the early '80s, and since I've had it on the ColecoVision. And it's one of those games that you never get tired of. It's like baseball or poker or something.
Right.
It's just so much fun, and there's so many nuances that you never get tired of it.
Right.
That's one thing about the old games that are different than a lot of the new games. The new games are immersive, they're movie-like, they're absorbing, and you complete the story, and you enjoy it.
Right.
But you're not necessarily. You may go back to it, again because it was so great. You had so much fun playing it. But it's not something you're just going to pick up and play all the time.
Yeah,
necessarily.
The replayability and just to be able to, I've got 15 minutes to game for a little bit, pick it up, play it, and then put it down.
That's the greatness of the old games is you can keep going back to them and they're still fun. They're more like, to me, the old games are more like a sport because you're always trying to better yourself, your score.
Right, trying to better your score, trying to better your time, all that kind of stuff. So, well, this is great. Why don't we just kind of scan around and get a shot of the whole room here as we close up here. And just so many cool things here to see.
DVD collection.
DVD collection over there, and just all the systems here kind of set up and everything. Brett, thanks so much for taking time to show us all your stuff here. I'm going to spend some more time here at some point playing some of these games and stuff.
Absolutely.
If you're all right with that.
Oh, you bet.
Because this is just
we'll have
really
to give a get together.
Yeah, definitely. And with the consoles, hopefully, there's all kinds of doomsayers out there saying that consoles won't be around forever and stuff like that. Just kind of in closing here, how do you feel about the future of consoles versus, iPhone mobile gaming and cloud gaming and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I suppose it is possible there won't be actual. I never thought there were certain things that would go away from my past, and there's you see internet memes all the time of things that no longer exist.
Right, right.
Phone books, whatever, which actually still do exist, but you know what I mean. So many things like the bookstore is going to disappear. There's all these things that people have said for years that are going to disappear, and some of them have. It's possible the consoles will no longer, or it'll be something different. It'll be built into your TV, or it'll be this universal box, or which Sony and Microsoft have kind of tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still, obviously you still have media, physical media, but that could go away, I suppose. I know Nintendo is in the early plan, or I've heard they're in the early planning stages of another console, just for the future. They have a map, they have something mapped out for another console. Not necessarily with Sony and Microsoft. I think they may go. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say at this point.
Well, I've always believed that the whole gaming industry is software driven, not hardware driven, and so as long as some of these creators like Naughty Dog and other people are creating these amazing games like Uncharted, and they're exclusive to a certain system,
right.
And they're great games, people are going to get those systems to want to play those games.
Yeah,
so,
it's just, but will at some point it be like CDs where you can play that game on anything?
On anything, yeah. It's
or will there be just
open
one
at this
thing,
point.
like a record player?
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, Brett, thanks again so much, man, for
you're
taking
welcome.
time
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
to talk with us a little bit here. Thank you to my camera person Bailey for doing this, and thank you everyone at Hold Square, all you Reapers out there. I appreciate you guys watching, and stay tuned to holdsquare.com for more information and opportunities to game with other adult gamers. And tell us one more time, Brett, when your book's going to be out.
My latest book, The 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 1977 through 1987, is due any day now. You can pre-order it right now on Amazon.com. And for more information, you can go to my website, Brett, BRETTWEISS words.com, BrettWeissWords.com.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.